Hmm. Hare Krishna, Shri Rupa Manjari, Hare Krishna Gayatri.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Okay, so we're on chapter 8.
Yes, Maharaj.
Beginning of the 8th chapter. Actually, it's one of my favorite chapters. Some of the purports are really, I guess, breathtaking, and just like really connects you to the process of Krishna consciousness and hearing and chanting. So we'll read the first. I think we may be able to get through 2 because quite short purport. So text number 1. Kim tad brahma kim adhyatmam kim karma purushottamam abhibhutam chak kim potam adidevam kim uchate. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. Oh, Smita, you want to read that?
Sure, Maharaj.
This is actually all the questions everybody, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, it's great questions. Like what is the self? What is fruitive activities? What is the material world? What are the demigods? And there's more questions in the next verse too. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's okay. Maharaj, would you like me to read the whole purport because it's short?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. In this chapter, Lord Krishna answers different questions from Arjuna, beginning with what is Brahman. The Lord also explains karma, fruitive activities, devotional service, and yoga principles, and devotional service in its pure form. The Srimad Bhagavatam explains that the Supreme Absolute Truth is known as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan. In addition, the living entity, the individual soul, is also called Brahman. Arjuna also inquires about Atma, which refers to body, soul, and mind. According to the Vedic dictionary, Atma refers to the mind, soul, body, and senses also. Arjuna has addressed the Supreme Lord as Purushottama, Supreme Person, which means that he was putting these questions not simply to a friend, but to the Supreme Person, knowing him to be the supreme authority able to give definite answers.
Any takeaways or comments? Pretty straightforward, huh? Hare Krishna Pushpanjali. The next. Pretty clear, straight.
Yes, Maharaj. You can go for it.
So text number 2. Adiyagya kata kotra dehasmin madhusudana prayana kalecham chakatam jayoshi nitya tatmabi. Who is the Lord of sacrifice and how does he live in the body? Madhusudana. And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? If we remember back to the last verse of the 7th chapter, Krishna tells Arjuna in the 30th verse that those in full consciousness of me who know me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principle, the material manifestation of the demigods, of the methods of sacrifice, can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even at the time of death. So it's, when you look at these questions, it's like Krishna is saying that, you know, who is the Lord of sacrifice? Who is the governing principle of material nature? What are the demigods? What are the methods of sacrifice? And those who know me. So Arjuna is he's just referring to all those things that Krishna just said. Krishna just said so many things about himself for so many chapters. And now Arjuna wants to know what he has to say about these questions. So we have a reader, we have our teachers. Sri Rupa, are you ready to take a chance here? Thank you.
Lord of sacrifice, they refer to either Indra or Vishnu. Vishnu is the chief of the primal demigods, including Brahma, and Shiva and Indra is the chief of the administrative demigods. Both Indra and Vishnu are worshipped by yajna sacrifices. But here, Arjuna asks who is actually the Lord of yajna, sacrifice, and how the Lord is residing within the body of the living entity.
Let's
Shall I
get
go?
one more. Yeah, finish one more paragraph.
Arjuna addresses the Lord as Madhusudana, because Krishna once killed a demon named Madhu. Actually, these questions, which are of the nature of doubts, should not have arisen in the mind of Arjuna, because Arjuna is a Krishna conscious devotee. Therefore, these doubts are like demons. Since Krishna is so expert in killing demons, Arjuna here addresses himself as Madhusudana, so that Krishna might kill the demonic doubts that arise in Arjuna's mind. Now the word, go on, Maharaj.
What do you think? On page 4.
Yes, Maharaj, this is pretty clear.
Okay,
So
so
would you like to add something to it?
Yeah, I will when we get to the end.
Okay.
Now the word prayanakal in this verse is very significant because whatever we do in life will be tested at the time of death. Arjuna is very anxious to know of those who are constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness. What should be their position at that final moment? At the time of death, all the bodily functions are disrupted and the mind is not in a proper condition. Thus disturbed by the bodily situation, one may not be able to remember the Supreme Lord. Maharaj Kulashekara, a great devotee, prays, "My dear Lord, just now I am quite healthy, and it is better that I die immediately so that the swan of my mind can seek entrance at the stem of your lotus feet." The metaphor is used because the swan, a bird of water, takes pleasure in digging into the lotus flowers. Its sporting proclivity is to enter the lotus flower. Maharaj Kulashekara said to the Lord, "Now my mind is undisturbed and I am quite healthy. If I die immediately thinking of your lotus feet, then I am sure that my performance of your devotional service will become perfect. But if I have to wait for my natural death, then I do not know what will happen. Because at that time, the bodily functions will be disrupted, my throat will be choked up, and I do not know whether I should be able to chant your name. Better let me die immediately." Arjuna questions how a person can fix his mind on Krishna's lotus feet at such a time.
Very good question. How to, in the next couple of verses, Krishna will tell Arjuna, wherever our consciousness is when we leave this body, that mindset takes us into our next life. Yam Yam Smartam, whatever we remember. So Prabhupada mentions that remembrance of Krishna is not possible for what Prabhupada says, the impure soul, or the soul who has hasn't connected Krishna to his whole life, to their whole life. And so I'm jumping back and forth the paragraphs, but I'll just go through it. The Lord of sacrifice. So this is good. I mean, we really have to, the whole purpose of this process of Krishna consciousness is to train ourselves so that we can actually remember Krishna at the moment of death. In the purport, Prabhupada said it's not possible for the impure soul, one who has not been trained in Krishna consciousness, or one who has not been trained in the devotional practices of serving the Lord. So one of some of the questions here are given here are the Lord is sacrifice. So Prabhupada explains that it may refer to Indra or Vishnu. Vishnu is the chief. There's Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. They control the material modes in this material world. There's passion, there's goodness, passion, and ignorance. And so Lord Vishnu takes care of goodness. Goodness means maintenance. Brahma is in charge of creation. Creation means passion. And Lord Shiva is in charge of destruction, which is ignorance. So these three modes of material nature are done by these primal demigods. Brahma, Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. And Indra is known as the chief administrative demigod. Indra, he's kind of like, I guess he's the chairman of the board, and he's also in charge of the rain. And there's a wonderful pastime where we're getting into the season now, the Govardhan Leela pastime, where Krishna just was with the Smarta Brahmanas. Smarta Brahmanas mean like very academically inclined, not much heart, a lot of brain, and I can't say not much heart, but the heart's not there. The brain it's just all it's like almost all academic. And Krishna and Balaram, I think I may have told this to this group before. The Krishna and Balaram were playing with the cowherd boys, and they saw the Yajna Brahmins. The Brahmins were performing a sacrifice, and Krishna and Balaram told them, go ask the Brahmins, tell them that Krishna and Balaram are hungry, and all the boys are hungry. So they went to the Brahmins, and the Brahmins didn't even pay attention to them because they thought the rituals of serving Vishnu were more important than the loving relationship that one can have with Krishna. And so, or didn't know about that loving relationship with Krishna. And so the boys came back and told Krishna, they didn't even respond. They didn't want to give us anything. So Krishna says, go ask their wives. And so the boys went to ask the wives, and the wives, when they heard that Krishna and Balaram were hungry and the cowherd boys were hungry, they had like a panic attack. It was like shocking to them that the boys are right next to us, they're right here, and they're hungry, and the wives just went and took all the ingredients that their husbands had for the sacrifice and just went running to Krishna and served Krishna. And then the Brahman priests realized, oh my goodness, what's the use of all of our Vedic education if the person that we're worshiping here in his personal form is right here asking us for the result or just the ingredients of the sacrifice, just the fruits and whatever is being offered, and we neglect them. So in the Bhagavatam it says, to hell with this and to hell with that. It was like a waste of my time. And then the cowherd boys and Krishna and Balaram, they start walking. And they meet Krishna's father, and Krishna's father's about to do an Indra sacrifice, a sacrifice for Lord Indra, because Indra is in charge of the rains. And so Krishna asks his father, "What are you doing?" And he says, "You're just a little boy." This is the amazing thing about Krishna. And I sent it out to the people on WhatsApp today. Shiva Maharaj gave a wonderful lecture today on the beginning of the month of Kartik. Tomorrow is the beginning of the most highest or spiritual month in the Vedic calendar. It begins tomorrow and it goes up until the 18th, I think, of November. And so this Indra Yajna, he was going to perform a sacrifice to Indra. So his father said, "You're too young, don't worry." He says, No, I'm your son. You have to tell me about this. You have to tell me. So he started telling him that we're performing a sacrifice because we're dependent on the rain. And without the rain, we can't provide food for our cows, and et cetera, et cetera. So Krishna convinces them to worship Govardhan Hill. And then Indra gets upset. Indra gets upset and he tries to flood all of the land. He just tries to flood all the land. But Krishna picks up a hill with his little hand and holds it up like an umbrella. It's described like a little, what's it compared to, like a holding up a mushroom, a frog holding up like an umbrella over the head, and protects all the Vrindavan, the residents of Vrindavan. who don't know that Krishna is actually the Supreme Personality of God. It's not like Arjuna here, who understands that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. The personality of Krishna comes out in this month. Krishna's personality comes out in this month, where Mother Yashoda, his mother, begins to treat him as an ordinary child. This is my son. And sometimes he shows that he's the Supreme Lord, and she says, well, maybe he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he's my son. It's just like the disconnect. In other words, like it's given the example, like if you're like in charge of a corporation and everybody's just like in on reverence of you're always like, on edge, and that's kind of things that on reverence worship. But Krishna at his home, just like a person when he goes home. Was that Churchill that Prabhupada told the story about, was behind the doors and his grandson was on his back or something? That was Winston Churchill, wasn't it? Yeah. So there's a big minister waiting to see Winston Churchill. He's like waiting and waiting. The secretary said, he'll just be with you just a few minutes. He'll be with you. So finally, this minister peeks through the door of Winston Churchill's office, and he sees him on his hands and knees and his grandson whipping him. Go, Grandpa, go, go, go. Get going, Grandpa, get going. And so that level of the child's intimacy with Winston Churchill is different than him being the whatever it was, whatever they call Prime Minister of England or something like that. That relationship is more dear to his heart than it is to being the Prime Minister of England. And so in the same way, when Krishna can just be himself without having hundreds of thousands of verses being chanted about him and all these different things, and can just be the little kid that he is, then that brings out Krishna's, what would you say, real heart, brings out the real heart of Krishna. I don't know why I got into this with the demigods, because Indra is the chief administrative demigod. And so sometimes by the performance of yajna, Indra forgets his position as a servant of Krishna. Indra forgets. We all that's one of the problems we have. We forget our relationship with the Supreme Lord. Anyone have any takeaways before I go through the whole purport a little bit? Thoughts? Feedback? Nanette?
Well, it's interesting that you just told that story, because I just read that story in the Krishna book.
Yeah.
So thank goodness I'm familiar with it. So a couple of questions. So being trained in Krishna consciousness, you have to be trained in Krishna consciousness, whether you're conscious at death or not. And actually, I just watched my father die.
Mm.
And it was pretty peaceful, and it was, it wasn't horrible. He just, the soul wanted to leave the body. And I did some prayers and special things for him. I've seen on YouTube and I've seen on Facebook some of the devotees who were dying, and how their guru was, chanting with them, or even some of the Maharajas that were dying. They have the whole group of people around, and I watched the video of Srila Prabhupada, and everybody's in the room. And so if let's say, your process has affected all of your mind and your body, and you can't remember Krishna, but you have all of this support around you. So how does that help?
Your process has
the process of dying, you're going through that. And like he says, your mind can't focus well, and your body's, letting go and so forth. So does other people around chanting for you, can that help you at the time of death? Because I noticed that in a lot of these videos.
Yeah. The answer is yes. And it's like, I mean, you might remember Guru Maharaj used to come to Houston. So I was there at his passing. You know, I was just holding his hand. And they were doing kirtan. Govinda Maharaj was doing
Right.
kirtan.
Right.
And I was squeezing his hand in relationship to kirtan. And the devotees were chanting like anything, right? We were chanting like anything because I told them a few days before his passing, I said, there's a long conversation, but I'll just make it short. Because he trusted in the holy name. He actually he said, I have faith in the holy name and I have faith in Srila Prabhupada. And so I said, you have to have faith in me and Burjan. Burjan Prabhu was another one there, Govinda Maharaj, Radhanath Maharaj, others. And I said, because Prabhupada explains that leaving this world is like a solo flight. In other words, we get so much training throughout our life, but at the time of death, we have to like fly our own airplane, so to speak, in one sense. So I told him, I said, Borijan and I and Govinda Maharaj, we're all here. We're like those guys at the tarmac at the airport with the orange flashlights. We're going to do our best to get you on the right runway. We get you, try to get you on the right runway. My mouth is running away when I'm trying to say runway. Get you on the right runway so that when it comes time for you to depart, you'll be there and ready. And that's part of doing kirtan. That's part of chanting when someone is about to leave this world, because they may not be able to themselves, as was the case of Guru Maharaj, although we did see him moving his tongue at the last few minutes of his life. And it looked like Hare Krishna. It looked like when somebody would be tongue motion and his lip motion and stuff. And so the devotees, they were, Govinda Maharaj is a little, I guess I can't say he's a little wild. Govinda Maharaj he's a really fun guy to be around. And so he was actually yelling Hare Krishna in Maharaj's ear, just like yelling so that and I told Govinda Maharaj after when Maharaj passed away, I said, if he went back to Godhead, all glories. If he didn't, he'll be deaf in that one ear when he in his next life, because you were young, so not in his ear. And it was a friendly commentary on the event and stuff like that. So it helps. It helps. I pray that I'm around the chanting of holy name when my time is up. And even if not, even if it's described in the scriptures that it's just like that verse we've quoted many times, Neha Vikarmanasasi Patrabhayam Vijite, that in this endeavor of devotional practices, there's no loss of diminution. It can never be taken away. And it protects one from the most dangerous type of fear, and so everyone's fearful of death to a certain extent. We all have, we may be real macho men and women when we talk about, when we leave this world, but ultimately, we're attached. We're very attached to this, and the level of that attachment is quite deep, and that's one of the realizations that devotees have when they first come to Krishna consciousness is like, oh my goodness, I got a long what would you say, some schooling to do here. I have a lot of schooling to do here to get to that point. And so what Krishna describes, that for the one who has served him, even at that moment, if he's unable to utter the holy name, then Krishna comes within the heart. Manifestation of the super soul is an expansion of Krishna, and Krishna manifests himself through that expansion and protects the devotee at that time. Krishna tells Arjuna in the Gita that I will always protect you. You Arjuna, you declare boldly that my devotees will never perish. And it's interesting because the commentaries on that, the commenters, people who make commentaries on the verse explain that sometimes Krishna won't tell the truth. I mean, he's like a little cranky kid that, he's like, sometimes he breaks the yogurt and feeds it to the monkeys, and he's like pinching babies and making them cry. He's always doing some little thing here and there, it all endearing the hearts of the Brajvasis, the residents of Vrindavan. So in order for everyone to accept that Krishna's devotees will never be perished, Krishna tells Arjuna, you say it, because then they'll believe it. If I say it sometimes, like Krishna's, he stands in a threefold bending form. So he stands a little crooked, his stick's a little crooked, his walk is a little, and so they describe it like that. And so, but it declared boldly that my devotees will never perish. And so we always have that comfort of knowing that whatever we've done in this life, in the process of devotional service and in our karmic relationships, that's going to come to us. But that devotional practice will never go away. If we become 10% or 20% God conscious in this lifetime, in the next lifetime, that's where we begin. That's Krishna's guarantee. So we always want that. One devotee's father in Houston, his father was in India, and they just had Prabhupada's chanting, the recording of Prabhupada chanting with him for the last 3 or 4 days of his life. And we were just praying that he could hear Prabhupada. I'm not a doctor, but I've heard that the last sense to go is the hearing sense. I've heard that if you're in a hospital room or a hospice room where someone is about to leave their body, don't start talking about them because they can still hear, or don't talk about, just give them comfort. Use your voice to give them comfort at that time, rather than talking about so many things other than which that will help them process the process of death. Can I say it like that? We can use 2 words in a row. The process of death as we're doing it. And yeah, I mean, I've been there several times for several people, and it's like it's a moment. And sometimes like some people react differently. The arm, the movement of the arm, all these things are well known, and it's not like Vaishnavas are because one is a devotee of Krishna, that they don't follow the laws of material nature when it comes to material nature things. We used to think we were above the rules, the laws of material nature, but we found out that we're actually not. That we're a transcendental platform. But we are in one sense a spirit soul, but we're still in a material body. We have to take care of that. Just like Prabhupada would always end his letters, I hope this finds you in good health. He was very concerned about the devotees being healthy and caring for them. So yeah, it helped. I mean, anything we can do. And even prayers, like you said some prayers for your father. Mm-hmm. There's prayers before, there's prayers after. I know I had a Jewish friend that went to his father's funeral, and he did he went to Hebrew school, and he recited he's a Hare Krishna, he's all shaved up, and doing everything proper for the Jewish ceremony as his oldest son was required to do. And that's cool as far as I'm concerned. It's very good. Very good. We honor, you honor your father.
Well, my father was lucky too, because he got the Jewish prayers, but he got a little Krishna consciousness too, and he didn't even really know it.
Okay, I got the Sukriti. There you go. Unknowingly chanting Hare Krishna, dropping some holy water.
Ganga water. I sure did. I did.
Yeah.
So he
These-
was covered.
Yeah, these things are, they seem ritualistic in one sense, but they're devotional practices that have value. And, the Jewish rites, the Christian rites, the Hare Krishna rites, the Vaishnava rites, these things have purpose. And hopefully, it's not even hopefully for me, it's just like, it's almost like, we use that word intrinsic today. It's almost a part of me that understands that this is real. This process and the process of devotional life is true to its word. And we get that the more we dive in, the more we experience. But it was nice you were there with your father. It's very wonderful.
Well, close. I was close. Thank you. Thank you, Maharaj.
Any other comments or takeaways from that first paragraph or this whole purport? The address of Madhusudana, just like Prabhupada says that the nature of doubts should have not arisen in Arjuna's heart because he's a devotee, he's a Krishna conscious devotee. And so Prabhupada many times will say that these doubts are coming to Arjuna for him to ask the questions so Krishna can answer the questions, so all of us will get the answers to the questions that we have in life. There's a special kind of, we need this type of information. And doubts, sometimes Prabhupada says here, they're compared to demons. Demons is like it's a heavy word for me. It's just like, it's like, I'm so used to the Judeo-Christian, way of demons hunting and so many different things, but it's actually in one sense true. The doubts that we have hold us back from our ability to perform pure devotion service. If we were free of doubt, we would be a pure devotee. If we had 100% faith in Krishna, then we would be actually a pure devotee. We would actually be with Krishna completely within our hearts. But because we still have some doubt, or we still have some misgiving, or we still don't trust ourselves sometimes, there's a lot of it. I feel for myself, I just don't trust myself enough then those doubts are there, so that it's how the names of Krishna have meaning here. That's what I was trying to say, that Krishna, he killed this demon Madhu, so please kill the demon, please remove these doubts from my mind, remove these doubts from my heart. And then at the last paragraph, which describes the word Parayana Kale, this verse is significant because whatever we do will be tested at the time of death, as we were explaining before. Our thoughts carry, in other words, the Paramatma accompanies us. The Lord of the heart is the witness of all of our activities, and he carries us, our subtle body and our spirit soul, into the next journey, our next body. And because the Lord has witnessed everything that we've done, then he knows exactly our next destination is meant to be. And sometimes devotees say, well, if I don't, how can I believe that if I don't remember it? But there's so many things we don't remember. Probably would give the example, sometimes you don't remember being in the womb, but it's obvious that you were there. So remembering something isn't the only form of proof. Hearing is a form of proof, as long as you're hearing from the right source. I've given an example before, just like if I had some cleaning fluid in a glass and somebody came to the room and thought it was a glass of water, went to drink it, and said, "Oh, that's cleaning fluid." And so they immediately put it down because they accept that as proof. My words are proof that that's cleaning fluid. And so the words of the Vedas, the words of the Gita, the words of the scriptures are giving us truths that are beyond our ability to understand on our own. Srila Prabhupada would give that in the Ishopanishad, where he brings up the word Veda means knowledge. And so knowledge that is beyond our ability to understand on, like, say, the material level, like experimental level, we have to go on authority. So Prabhupada gave the example, if you want to know who your father is, there's one authority, and that's your mother. You know, and so if your mother says this is your father, then that's your father. And you probably say you can't go around the whole world asking every man, "Are you my father? Are you my father? Are you my father? Are you my father? Are you my father?" Because you'll never understand that way. And I don't know about that. What do they call that test to see who the father? They call
DNA.
DNA something.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think that's like 99% accurate or something like that. So there may be a little bit of a flaw in there. And so the idea is your mother is the source of that understanding, of that knowledge. And so the Vedas are compared to the mother. They teach us that which is beyond our ability to experimentally understand. And when you really take a look at understanding things experimentally, it means you're in charge of the experiment. And we're so flawed in ourselves. We have imperfect senses. Anything that we're going to make is also going to have some imperfections. And so even our experimental, what would you say, analysis or of that subject is also flawed. And so what proof do we really have outside of scripture? Prabhupada uses that word, axiomatic truths, those truths which are self-evident. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal in the eyes of the Creator. I think that's our constitution or something. We hold these truths to be self-evident. And so our consciousness, our being, all these things are self-evident. Now we're here, we're talking. It's not like, it's not an illusion. I mean, it's here. I mean, it's temporary, but it's not an illusion. Any feedback, any thoughts? I rely on the thoughts a lot. Okay. Should we go to the next?
Yes, Maharaj.
Really long purport. Okay. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha. Akshadam Brahma Paramam Sabhavo Jatmana Uchate Puta Bhavo Bhavad Karo Vishaga Kama Samgita. JNI is a hard one for me. These JNs and stuff like that have to have like a foreign tongue. Translation: the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the indestructible living entity is called Brahman. The eternal nature, the eternal nature is called Adhyatma, the self. Actions pertaining to the development of the material body of living entity is called karma, or fruitive activities. So Nanette, you're usually our next in line to read. Are you?
Okay. So Brahman is indestructible and eternally existing, and its constitution is not changed at any time. But beyond Brahman, there is Para-Brahman. Brahman refers to the living entity, and Para-Brahman refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The constitutional position of the living entity is different from the position he takes in the material world. In material consciousness, his nature is to try to be the Lord of matter. But in spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness, his position is to serve the Supreme. When the living entity is in material consciousness, he has to take on various bodies in the material world. That is called karma, or varied creation by the force of material consciousness.
Any thoughts? Any takeaways? See, we're forced to take a particular type of body according to our activities. We don't get to, we choose it by our actions. I've given this example to this group. It's not like we have a catalog of 8,400,000 different types of bodies and we just like, okay, I think I'll be a spider. No, it's if you're acting in such and such way, then you're because man proposes and God disposes. In other words, whatever actions we perform in this lifetime, there's a reaction for those things. And so there are all these different species of life to fulfill the desires that we have to enjoy separately from Krishna within this material world. And I would usually hear that is called karma, or varied creations by the force of material consciousness. In other words, our consciousness forces us into this material existence, and whatever form of body we get, it's arranged by material nature. And whatever we're supposed to have, is prearranged. It's like prearranged by our previous activities. Therefore, we really own this. That's one of the points that was drilled into me when I was a first devotee, that we own the reactions that we're receiving in this lifetime. We earn them, and we have to learn from them, not just get upset about them. Just learn from them and learn that if we act against the laws of nature, or even against the laws of laws of God or the laws of nature, they're going to be held responsible. The human life is the life of responsibility. When the living entity is in material consciousness, he has to take on various material bodies in the material world. Very clear sentence. Rajabhumi, are you up for reading the next paragraph?
Sure, Maharaj. In Vedic literature, the living entity is called Jivatma and Brahman, but he's never called Para-Brahman. The living entity, Jivatman, takes different positions. Sometimes he merges into the dark material nature and identifies himself with matter. And sometimes he identifies himself with the superior spiritual nature. Therefore, he is called the Supreme Lord's marginal energy. According to his identification with material or spiritual nature, he receives a material spiritual body. In material nature, he may take a body from any of the 8,400,000 species of life, but in his spiritual nature, he has only one body. In material nature, he is manifested sometimes as a man, demigod, animal, beast, birth, etc., according to his karma. To attain material heavenly planets and enjoy their facilities, he sometimes performs sacrifices, yajna, but when his merit is exhausted, he returns to earth again in the form of a man. This process is called karma.
There's a certain class of worshipers that want to go to the heavenly planets. They hear of the opulence of the heavenly planets. Just like sometimes we hear this neighborhood over here is good and that neighborhood over there is not so safe, or it's not so clean. And so we want to move up, the social ladder. So taking birth on the heavenly planets is, where life is easier, life is more opulent, life is less, just what would you say, disturbing or things like that. And so they perform certain sacrifices so that they can go up to the heavenly planets. But when the results of those pious sacrifices are finished, when the results is done, they have to take birth again in this world. So there's a class of people that want to just keep going up to the heavenly planets and then come down and just do sacrifices again to get back up, and then come back down to get sacrifices and to go back up. But that's like being, Prabhupada gave the example, it's like being on a Ferris wheel. Sometimes you're on the top and sometimes you're on the bottom, and sometimes you're on the top and sometimes you're on the bottom, but you're simply on a Ferris wheel. You're not really making any forward progress.
So,
Any thoughts?
Maharaj,
Yes.
so according to this, what we had just read, the next body that you're going to attain is according to your karma. But then I have also read that according to your consciousness at the time of death, could you span karma? And you just previously said that it's already preordained. So if it's preordained, even if our consciousness at the time of death is chanting the holy name, but because of whatever you have done, I mean, could you clarify that?
Yeah, because it says in material nature, he manifests sometimes as a man, demigod, animal, bird, etc., according to his karma. That means that we're not in spiritual consciousness at that time. And so, in other words, our actions are going to produce our thoughts at the time of death. This is explained in whatever we do in this life is going to create the thoughts in our heart, in our mind, or our consciousness at the time of death. Whatever we do is going to manifest it. And so if our activities are based in Krishna consciousness, then we'll be in spiritual consciousness. We won't be in material consciousness. And if we're not in material consciousness, then we're not under the laws of material karma. But if we're in material consciousness, then that consciousness will carry us. So those activities manifest in our consciousness, and they carry us to the next body. It forces our thought process. It makes our thought process. Whatever we're going to do, everybody had an NDE, near death. NDE, they always say that their life flashes before them. It's like just a big flash of like everything that, things that happen to them in their life. And so those actions, the actions we perform impress upon our consciousness at the time of death. But if the actions that we're performing are dovetailed in the service of Krishna, and practically speaking, every one of our activities can be dovetailed in the service of Krishna, and we'll remember Krishna. Krishna will be there. So it's basically the same thing. It's using different wordage. It's the same thing. In other words, it's just our karma, our consciousness. Our consciousness will carry us. And according to because the word karma comes from to act. And so our actions are going to create our next body. And if our actions are spiritual, then we're going to get a spiritual body. It won't be material. I think it's simple. For me, it's a little simple.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Some thoughts?
Pushpanjali has.
Oh, I never see that little yellow thing. I'm always looking for people. There's actually a system for it. Pushpanjali.
Yes, Maharaj. Maharaj, how can we know now what our level of consciousness is? Like sometimes I wonder when I'm driving the car and somebody suddenly comes in, I am not thinking of Krishna at that time. My mind is blank. And so many at other times I've seen, like if suddenly fall or, something happens, I'm not thinking of Krishna. I mean, is that an indication of where our consciousness is? Or how can I know?
Maybe a little indication. Keshava Bharti Maharaj told the story, but when I was in Vrindavan and I blacked out, I was unconscious, but I kept chanting. So that was a good sign for me. I was quite happy. I mean, all my teeth are broken and my nose was broken, but at least I chanted Hare Krishna. So if, like most of the time I see devotees, if something shocking happens, they go Krishna. And it's not like you have to, you can be doing something for Krishna, and thinking of Krishna, just like this is who I'm working for. You may be having to do IT work or education work or whatever, rehab student work or whatever it may, doctor's work or whatever it may be. But the intention of your work is for Krishna. Krishna will come in. I've seen it happen. I mean, people, one of my Guru Cool boys, he almost drowned one time. It was a fact that, we were canoeing. I may have told you the story. And the only white water in Florida is about probably 15 yards. So we had a canoe for like 8 hours to get to this spot where there'd be like a little bit of rapids. And his canoe tipped over. And I counted, as soon as the canoe tipped over, I counted the boys and I counted how many came up. And the canoe was flat. It was completely, it was engulfed with water and upside down. And I knew there was a boy underneath there. And the problem was he had his life jacket on because he couldn't surface dive to get up underneath the canoe because the life jacket was holding him up underneath the water inside the canoe. So I just immediately went over there and I picked up the canoe and flipped it over. And I won't say the word that he said when he came out, but he would be a worm somewhere that we often talk about. And I said, just see where your consciousness is. You're almost leaving your body and you're going to say, oop. And that's where you're going to go. You got to practice this a little bit more. I had a little lifeguard training when I was in middle school and otherwise actually I took canoeing in college. I got an A in canoeing, by the way. One of my few A's.
Thank you, Maharaj, for that story.
So the thing is like, a lot of times most devotees, I hear devotees when they're shocked, they'll say Krishna. They'll just say Krishna will automatically come out. And so hopefully, if you slip, you can, even if you can't say it, you can think it. Wherever you're thinking of, wherever consciousness is at that time. And it takes practice. It's going to come up I'm so tempted to almost have these next purports memorized. I'm so tempted to kind of jump into the purports prior to their manifestation, but yeah, we have to have the training. You have to train it. In other words, when it happens, just practice doing it in the net. Your microphone's off. The net, your microphone is off.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I think that you confirmed something really, really important to me when you spoke about what happened to you and you were unconscious, but you were chanting. Because I know of a story of the Rav Berg, who was kind of like the Srila Prabhupada of the Kabbalah Center movement. He was very, very high level man. And he had a really bad stroke, really bad. And he had a hole in his head. I mean, they didn't even think he was going to live. And so there was a mention of him in his room in a coma. And I believe a family member was there. And he starts saying the Anabacoa prayer. And there are things that you do when you do that, some hand movements and you're washing away. The man was in a coma and he was chanting the Anabacoa prayers, just like what you said. But he wasn't talking and he wasn't doing anything else. And he was unconscious and he had a hole in his head. And it was kind of a miracle that he did survive. It took him a while to recover from that. And the doctors couldn't really explain it. You know, of course, it was very spiritual, the whole thing. But he did the same thing you did. It had been so ingrained in him, in his spiritual consciousness, that he just automatically did that. But he was in a coma.
Yeah, but it's good that hopefully I go unconscious like that again at the time of death, because consciously I'm not always like that. I got lucky when I was unconscious. But.
So it confirms that if you practice
Yes.
at the spiritual level, at the spiritual consciousness level, that gets, you know, compounded in you at a different level, at the material level, and it's already there, and it can be, you know, accessed and utilized. Yeah.
Well, that, and when one is in a coma or knocked out or whatever it may be, there can be so many thoughts. We don't remember, you know, I don't remember being not, when I was knocked, I just blacked out and I hit my head on that marble floor. And I remember kind of going down, and that's the last thing I remember until I woke up. I don't even know how long. I don't remember one thought. I don't remember having one thought at that time. And it wasn't until Maharaj told me, oh man, you're chanting Hare Krishna all the time. And I think my mouth is full of teeth. I said, okay. It works. It works. Some other thoughts from anyone? Okay, quiet. We have a quiet group today. It's the day before the full moon. Tomorrow is the Kartik moon, Kartik full moon. We'll get the chance to worship Lord Damodar.
Maharaj, I like the way that you're referring a lot. So I keep hearing the word actions, and I don't know if I've read it or I've heard it, but I used to obsess about, you know, what if I'm unconscious at the time of death, or, you know, and then somebody said, well, just act in a way so that Krishna will remember you. And I think that's beautiful. I was like, oh,
yeah, act in such a way. That's like Prabhupada would say sometimes would challenge Prabhupada, can you show me God? And Prabhupada would say, yes, but do you have the eyes to see? It's a famous, it's like, I mean, what a way to answer a question. Can you show me, you know, somebody like, you know, person, and can you show me God? Like, you're the guru, can you show me God? Like, you're gonna put your finger on his forehead and he's gonna see the light or something. And Prabhupada said, yes, but do you have the eyes to see? And what that really means is that do you have the integrity, or do you have the intention to take the training that it takes to see God? I mean, we have to undergo so much training to do so many things in this world. Just like we have an Ayurvedic doctor, we have MD here, we have teachers here. So much training has to go just to learn a little bit of something about some aspect of life. What to speak of training to understand the relationship with God? We have to, you know, it's necessary. And so are we willing? Are we willing, just like you were willing to become a teacher? So you underwent all the training so you could be a teacher. So that's, you know, and if we really want to see, if you like George Harris, I really want to see, I really want to know. So, yeah, so it's there. If we really want it, you know, you got to pay. I don't want to say pay, but it's like, you know, what is it? First deserve, then demand, or there's some kind of saying like, there's all these sayings that they have. So yeah, try to act in such a way that God will want us. Don't try to see God. Act in such a way that God will want to see us. I think it's how the statement goes. Just we're always trying to see through our like material experimental methods. We want to see God through some process. Act in such a way that He'll want to come and see you. Okay, nice to see everyone. Oh, 3 minutes over. Sorry, Nanteshwar. I looked at it was like 27, so I thought I had a couple minutes, but it went a little longer. Nice to see everyone. Always nice to see everyone. And hopefully we'll see you next Tuesday.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay. Okay. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Maharaj. Thank you.
We have so
Bye.
many teachers here, David. Oh, I should have David give one of his academic programs. I just attended one of his talks. It was really wonderful. Really, really an educator. There's teachers and there's educators.